This is for Khan Academy to help you with Khan Academy dividing decimals to the hundredths. In this one, you'll learn how to set up, we'll talk about setting up the problem correctly, how to move decimals so that you'll know where the decimal is in the answer. So there'll be no decimal in the divisor, and then you'll help you find where the decimal goes in the answer by knowing where the decimal is at in the dividend. And we'll again concentrate on forming the standard algorithm for division and check your work using estimation. So again, we won't spend too much time on the estimation and multiplication work, but no, you can always check these doing multiplication. If we have time, maybe we'll go through one of those and check it out. So let's go ahead and look at our first problem here. So our first problem is 1 and 15 hundredths divided by 23 hundredths. So first of all, we need to set this up into our standard algorithm, and then we're going to talk about something here. So if we set this up in our standard algorithm, again, the number out front goes underneath our division bracket. So we have 1 and 15 hundredths divided by 23 hundredths. Now, if we're dividing this out, let's take a look at this. We may not that you could work through this with a decimal, but it comes quite confusing. So there is a way to get rid of the decimal. If we think about this as a fraction, because we talked about how we can write all division problems as a fraction. If we go ahead and write this like this, we can take this problem, and if we multiply this by 100 over 100. Now we know if we multiply by 100, it's just going to move these decimals. We end up with 115 over 23. Now these are equivalent, so 115 divided by 23 is the same as 1 and 15 hundredths divided by 23 hundredths. These are equivalent equations because we just multiplied by what we call a 1 here. Because 100 over 100 is 1, so we haven't changed the value of the equation. So what we do to short step this, we don't have to show that we're multiplying by 1. We just realize we do that. We just say, okay, I got to move this decimal over 2 places, so I'm going to move this decimal over 2 places. And just knowing if there's a decimal in my answer, it has to go right above that decimal. And then we just treat this like our regular division problem. So we just say, how many times does 23 go into 215? And I know if this was 20, it would go into 100 about 5 times. So I'm just going to use that as my estimate. So I'm going to go 23. I'm going to times it by 5 and just see where we end up with. 5 times 3 is 15. Put down the 5. Carry the 1. 5 times 2 is 10. So we end up with exactly what we need. So then we just put 5. Again, we're talking about 23 into 215. So we end up with an answer of 115 minus that down. So our answer is just exactly 5 on this one. So our answer is 5, so we can just stop there, and we are good with that. That's as far as we need to go with that one. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the next one here. Okay, so let's look at this next one here. Next one we set up the same way. We set up our division problem again. The number out front is what goes underneath the bracket. So we have, and if you think you can do this, go ahead and pause the video and try it on your own. I encourage you to always do that. So we set it up here, and then we're dividing that by 61 hundredths. Now, this case, we got to move it 2 places. Now, if you notice here, we only have 1 spot to move that. So what we have to do is we still got to move it 2 spots. We got to put a 0 here to hold that place value. So if there is a decimal, it would go right there. And then we start going through it again using our estimation. I just like to look at I know 6 goes into 36, so that means 60 would go into 390 about 6 times. So I'm going to start with that as my first estimate. 61 times 6. 6 And then 6 times 6 is 36. So we end up, that's going to be enough time. So again, that needs to go above the 0 because that's the place value we're looking at. 61 and 390 would go 6 times. That's 366. Got to borrow from the 9. That becomes a 10. Subtract that down. We end up with a 4 and 8 minus 6 would give us a 2. Drop our 4 down here. We end up with 244. Again, I just know 6 into 24 would be about 4 times. So 60 into 240 would be about 4 times. So I'm going to check that. So 61 times 4 would go in there 4 and 24. So that's exactly what we need, isn't it? So it's going to go in there 4 times. Put that above the 4 because that's the place value we're working with, and that's 244. Minus that down, and we get 0. Now, one word of caution here. A lot of people will say, hey, I've got a 0 here. I am done. But we have to look right here and realize there's a place value still missing right here. So we have to drop down this 0, and we actually have to go through this and say how many times is 61 going to 0, and it goes in there 0 times. Okay, and 61 times 0 is 0. So if we were to subtract that down, just realize you have to take care of that 0 place in there. So we end up with 640 as our answer, not 64. A lot of people stop and say the answer is 64. But if you have that decimal over there, you've got to put that 0 in there and bring it down and continue on until you get all the over to the decimal. So don't stop there too early. Okay. And if you wanted to check these, you could multiply these together for the sake of the length of the video. I'm not going to do that. You could take 640 times 0.61 and times those together and see where you're at. Okay, let's look at one more. Okay, on this one, start out the same way again. Underneath our bracket is the one that's out front, so we end up with 10.56, and we're dividing that by 4.4. Now in this one, we only have to move the decimal over one place. So if we're thinking about timesing, we only times them by 10 on this one, and it just moves over one place. So our decimal would be right there, because that's where our decimal's at in the answer. So 4 into, we're looking at, it won't go into 1, it won't go into 10, so we're looking at 105. I know 40, if I double that, we're at 88. We aren't going to get another time in there. So it's only going to go into there 2 times. So that's 88. Subtract that down. We've got to borrow clear over here from our 1, so that becomes 10. We got to borrow from that, so that becomes 9. So 15. So I know 8 and 8 is 16, so that's one less, so it'll be 7. And then take that down, 170, and then we 17, and we can drop our 6 down, so we have 176. So we need to come out, if this is going to go in evenly, and most of these will go in con fairly even. I just know if I want to get a 6 here, I'm going to times 4 by 4. So I'm going to start with that just as my first choice, and that should be a pretty good estimate. So 44 times 4, that would be 16. Carry the 1, 4 times 4, 16, 17. So that's actually exactly what I need. So the 4, notice it goes above the 6, so that's after the decimal. 176. Notice our decimal, we don't ever drop a decimal down. We don't worry about it. The decimal is just there to help us figure out where it goes in our answer. Subtract that down, we get a 0. So we end up with 2 4/10 for our answer, because the decimal always just goes straight up as long as there's no decimal out in front. And we shifted that over to get rid of our decimal out in front. And the reason we can do that is that idea of timesing both by 10, and that will keep them equal. Okay, let me know with these again. Good luck with these. If you have any questions, let me know. Keep working through these. Good luck. Have a good day. Bye.